wish would come true. She was awestruck as she stepped out on the balcony that day as the newest member of the royal family.
Overwhelming what we saw. So humble, making all these thousands and thousands of people happy. It was just wonderful.
6 years before her death, Diana spoke about that moment and much more, recording her most intimate thoughts on 6 audio tapes which have been acquired by NBC and are being heard for the first time. They reveal a woman caught between her dreams and her despair.
The public side was very different, obviously, from the private side. The public side, they wanted a fairy princess who could come and touch them and everything would turn to gold and all their worries would be forgotten. Little did they realise that the individual was crucifying herself inside because she didn't think she was good enough.
On the tapes, Diana talked frankly about so many things. The joy she had in raising her 2 sons, William and Harry.
I hug my children to death. I get in bed with them at night and hug them, and I always say, who loves you most in the whole wide world? And they always say, Mommy. It's so important.
But also her struggle to emerge from the shadow of Camilla Parker Bowles, Prince Charles' lover.
I once heard him on the telephone in his bath, on his hand telephone, saying, whatever happens, I'll always love you.
The tapes were recorded with the help of a close friend and reveal Diana's most intimate feelings. She was blunt as she spoke of resorting to extreme measures, even attempting suicide, as her marriage fell apart.
I was so depressed, and I was trying to cut my wrist with razor blades.
The broadcast of Diana's recording stirred reactions around the world.
Princess Diana.
Princess Diana.
The obsession with Diana's life has barely begun to fade.
Those extraordinary tapes that broadcast on American television station NBC.
But if Prince Charles has thoughts about the tapes, he's keeping them to himself. Diana was forthright on the recordings about her bulimia, the disease which had come to dominate her life.
The bulimia was appalling, absolutely appalling. Anything I could find, I would gobble up and be sick 2 minutes later.
Diana said her husband accused her of crying wolf about the disease, which added to her distress.
My husband made me feel so inadequate in every possible way that each time I came up for air, he pushed me down again. You know, even if I ate a lot at dinner, Charles would still say, oh, is that going to reappear later? What a waste.
By 1988, the disease had gotten so out of hand, an old friend confronted the princess and gave her an ultimatum.
She said, well, you must tell your doctor. I said, I can't. She said, well, you must. I'm going to give you 1 hour to ring up your doctor, and if you don't do that, I'm going to tell the world.
Diana finally acknowledged that she needed help.
I suddenly woke up and realised that I was on the way down fast.
Diana went to a specialist in eating disorders, the same doctor who had treated her sister Sarah for anorexia. Right away, he suspected Diana had tried to commit suicide.
He said to me, how many times have you tried to get rid of yourself? And I thought, wow. So I said about 4 or 5 times. He said, how? And I said, all various instruments I tried and threats and all the rest of it, glass, a lot. And he said, I can get you better in no time at all. The problem lies with your husband. And he said, in 6 months' time, you'll be a totally different person.
As Diana began to gain control over the bulimia, her strength returned, and so did her courage. She planned a confrontation with the other woman in her husband's life.
The voice inside me said, just go for the hell of it. So I sat myself up something awful. This was my big step.
It was the winter of 1989. Charles and Diana were invited to a birthday party for Camilla's sister. Unexpectedly, Diana agreed to attend. Bodyguard Ken Wharf drove the couple to the party.
It was clear that Prince of Wales was unhappy that he was being accompanied by his wife, and I'm sure that Diana probably had a hidden agenda here.
After dinner, Diana noticed Charles had slipped away. She went downstairs and found Charles and Camilla talking to another guest.
I said to the 2 men, okay boys, I'll just have a quick word with Camilla, and I'll be up in a minute. And they shot upstairs like chickens with no heads, and I could feel upstairs, all hell breaking loose. What's she going to do?
Diana decided this was the moment to make it clear to Camilla that the royal marriage wasn't big enough for both women.
I was terrified of that, and I said, I know what's going on between you and Charles, and I just want you to know that. And she said to me, very interesting, she said to me, you've got everything you've ever wanted. You've got all the men in the world fall in love with you, and you've got 2 beautiful children. What more would you want? So I said, I want my husband. And I said to Camilla, I'm sorry I'm in the way, and it must be hell for both of you. I didn't know what's going on. Don't treat me like an idiot.
Tension was high as Worf drove the royal couple home that night.
I remember in the car that there was a debate between the two of them. Some of it seemed to be fairly hostile.
And in the car on the way back, my husband was over me like a bad rash. And I cried like I've never cried before. It was anger. It was 7 years of pent-up anger coming out.
Diana called it one of the bravest moments of her entire 10 years of marriage.
And the next morning I woke up and I felt different. Shift. Tremendous shift. I'd done something, said what I felt, but still the old jealousy and the anger swirling around. But it wasn't so deathly as it'd been before. And that was it, really. It was a big step for me.
There was a different princess in the sense that she'd almost sort of triumphed over something that hitherto had been a huge problem for many, many years. And there was no doubt in my mind that this really signified the ending of a marriage.
As the marriage spiraled downward, the palace tried to convince the public that the couple was still devoted, but the effort failed. A case in point, a trip to the Taj Mahal, a symbol of enduring love. Charles had visited when he was single and vowed then to return with the woman he loved. But instead of going with his wife when the opportunity arose, he went off to a business meeting instead, leaving the princess to pose alone. For photographer Ken Lennox, the symbolism was inescapable.
Here's Diana at one of the most romantic places in the world, sitting there on. And it was a sad photograph, and we saw more and more of these photographs.
It was just before that trip to India that Diana had begun making her secret tapes. She could no longer maintain the charade and was now determined to tell the public the truth about her private anguish. It would be a risky move.
And later, another set of secret tapes.
I can't do this. It's ghastly. I've got no adrenaline. I'm dead. I can't get anything out.
Diana captured on video as the world has never seen her.
In 1991, for the first time, Diana began to take control of her life. She discovered new strength and self-confidence.
I'm much happier now. I mean, I'm not blissful, but I'm much more content than I've ever been, because I've really gone down deep and scraped the bottom a couple of times and come up again.
But Diana told her close friends she felt more trapped by her marriage than ever, and more alienated from the royal family.
She was becoming angrier and angrier at what was going on within the situation.
I think I'm going to cut a very different path from everyone else. I'm going to break away from this setup.
That's when Diana decided to make her boldest move yet and reveal her secret misery to the world.
I think she was trying to make her case first before anybody else did it for her.
Telling the kind of explosive story Diana had in mind would break every rule of royal conduct. She would have to remain anonymous, fearing the consequences. The royal family might pronounce her mentally unsound, or worse.
The monarch had control over Diana's children, something she was acutely aware of. She was extremely concerned that she could then lose the children.
So if Diana was going to risk telling her story, it would have to be anonymously. In a book, she could reveal her secrets, but deny that they came from her. James Colthurst proposed his friend, Andrew Morton, an author and freelance royal reporter, whose pieces